Welcome back to Storytime Boulevard, your destination to sleep. I am Andrew, and as always, I'm honored to be your guide tonight. Before we begin, if this story brings you comfort, we invite you to support the channel by liking, commenting, or subscribing. Your kind words and presence help this cozy little corner of the world grow, and we're so grateful you're here. Wherever you are, I invite you now to pause, to take a deep breath, and allow yourself a moment to simply be. Tonight's tale is something a little different. A story of stillness, quiet wisdom, and a hidden room within the heart of Hogwarts. It's called Dumbledore, the room with no doors. This isn't a story of spells or jewels, but of memories, wonder, and the gentle places we go when we stop trying to find the way out and begin listening for the way in. So let's prepare to enter that space, not just in the story, but within ourselves. Let's begin with a breath. Inhale slowly through your nose, hold, and exhale through your mouth, letting the day fall away. With each breath, feel your shoulders drop. Feel your jaw release, and let your thoughts float like feathers, soft, untethered, and free. You might repeat softly in your heart, I am safe. I am at peace. I am ready to rest. Now let us begin. The castle had grown still. The portraits were asleep. The staircases had settled into their evening hush. A pale silver moon draped its light across the stone corridors of Hogwarts, softening every edge and shadow until the whole castle felt like a memory one could walk through. Albus Dumbledore moved quietly, his footsteps barely whispering against the cool flagstones. He wasn't seeking anything in particular. Some nights were like this, when sleep eluded him and the past stirred gently beneath the surface of his thoughts. He wandered not out of worry, but curiosity, a habit formed over decades. This night, however, the air felt different, charged not with danger, but with invitation. As he passed the third-floor corridor, near the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy, a warmth flickered down the hall, faint, golden and pulsing like a distant heartbeat. He turned toward it instinctively, not with urgency, but with that quiet attentiveness only Dumbledore could embody. There, where there had once been only a blank stretch of stone wall, stood a room he had never seen before. No door, no handle, just an opening carved from light. He paused. Hogwarts was old, older than even its founders, truly understood. It had moods, secrets, rooms that did not exist until the moment they were needed. He stepped through the archway, and at once the air changed. Warmer now, like the inside of a memory. Soft golden light pooled across the floor, though no lamps were visible. The chamber was circular, impossibly vast, and yet intimately quiet. Floating bookshelves spiraled up into a ceiling he could not see. Teacups hovered lazily mid-air, clinking now and then with the sound of home. It was silent, but not empty. Dumbledore stood in the centre, hands gently clasped behind his back, as he slowly turned in place. There were no windows, no fireplace, no way in and no way out, except the one he had just used, which was now gone. There was only the room, and whatever it wished to show him. He did not feel trapped. He felt expected. A chair appeared near the far wall, not conjured, but revealed, like it had always been there, waiting patiently. He moved toward it and sat. The cushion sighed beneath him, and a familiar fragrance filled the air. Lemon, bergamot, and a trace of woolen robes hung in old cedar drawers. He closed his eyes and whispered, not to the room, but to something older than language itself. All right then, I'm listening. And from the stillness came the soft echo of footsteps, not his own. The footsteps echoed like memories, not loud, not rushed, but familiar, in a way that tugged at the very edges of Dumbledore's thoughts. They approached from nowhere and everywhere all at once, as if time had unravelled slightly, just to let them through. Across the room, a second chair appeared, small, upholstered in deep blue velvet, with legs too short for a grown man. Sitting in it was a boy, no older than 11. His robes were neatly pressed, his auburn hair slightly tousled, and his expression thoughtful, not frightened, not surprised, merely observant, as though he had been here many times before. Dumbledore tilted his head. The boy looked familiar, not because of his features, though there was something haunting in the eyes, but because of his presence. Quiet, watching, waiting. Do you know where we are? Dumbledore asked, his voice warm, almost playful. The boy didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced upward at the shelves, swirling endlessly into the dim, glowing heights. This room shows you what you've hidden, he said softly. Or maybe what you've forgotten. Dumbledore studied him with interest, but not alarm. The room felt too calm for fear. Then I wonder, he said, what you and I are meant to remember. The boy smiled faintly, I think you already know." For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled with the subtle ticking of a pocket watch on a distant shelf and the distant rustle of turning pages, though no one could be seen reading. The boy rose from his chair and began walking in slow circles, his fingers trailing along invisible lines in the air. With each pass, faint shapes began to emerge, shimmering outlines of scenes that hovered briefly before fading. A winter's night at Godric's Hollow, a phoenix in mid-flight, a letter never sent. Dumbledore's eyes softened. These were not memories meant to haunt, but to humble, gentle reminders of the moments that shaped him and the moments he had shaped in return. "Who are you?" he asked at last, though part of him wasn't sure he wanted to know. The boy turned, hands clasped behind his back, a gesture that mirrored Dumbledore's own from earlier. "I'm the version of you who never stopped wondering what it all meant." Then, just as quietly as he had appeared, the boy sat again. The chair faded. The footprints vanished. Only the scent of old parchment and lemon drops lingered in the air. Dumbledore sat back, exhaling slowly. The room pulsed softly, like it was breathing with him. It was not finished. The quiet lingered, velvet thick and full of meaning. Dumbledore sat still, his hands resting gently on his lap, the glow of the room now softer, dimmed to the hue of candlelight through a curtain. He could feel something shifting, not around him, but within. Before him now stood a tall frame, shaped like a mirror, but filled with nothing but gently rippling air. No reflection met his eyes, just a translucent shimmer, like heat on stone, or memory on the edge of waking. He stood and stepped closer, curious. The frame pulsed once, with a low, harmonious hum. In its surface, shapes began to form. But not from this moment, not from the present. First came a boy in a school scarf, his cheeks flushed with youth and winter. Then two hands, aged and calloused, weaving a garland of wildflowers by moonlight. A woman's laughter echoed distantly, followed by the soft crunch of boots on snow-covered grass. Dumbledore said nothing. He simply watched. These were not moments of triumph or regret. They were the in-between, the things not written about in history books, the tender pauses in a life otherwise filled with headlines and heroism. Then the shimmer cleared again, and for the briefest of moments, he saw someone else, not himself, but a young man with storm-grey eyes, firelight flickering across his face. The expression on the man's face was soft, almost searching. Dumbledore's breath caught, but only for a second. "I thought I had closed that door long ago," he murmured. A gentle breeze circled the room in reply, warm, scented faintly, of clove and rain, as if the room itself was reminding him. "There are no doors here, only the rooms you carry." He reached out toward the surface of the frame, but his hand passed through it like mist. The vision dissolved into sparkles of light and faded into the air. Behind him, a kettle began to whistle, quietly, not insistently, and when he turned, a small tea table had appeared. 2 cups sat steaming beside a plate of sugared ginger biscuits. One of the cups bore a familiar pattern, stars, moons, and a single golden phoenix. He smiled softly and sat down again, wrapping both hands around the warm porcelain. "I suppose," he said to no one, "that some rooms are not meant to be escaped, only understood." The room offered no answer, but the tea, somehow, was exactly how he liked it. The steam curled lazily from the teacup, rising in quiet spirals that danced above the rim and disappeared into the glowing air. Dumbledore took a sip and closed his eyes, letting the warmth settle into him like a soft cloak. The taste was familiar, black tea, strong but sweet, with a trace of orange peel. Minerva had always brewed it that way. As the thought formed, so too did a quiet knock. Not at a door, for there were none, but from somewhere behind him, like a soft tap on a window that wasn't there. He turned. Across the room now stood a desk. It hadn't been there moments before. Behind it, seated as if she had always belonged, was Professor Minerva McGonagall. Not the strict figure she was in her teaching robes, nor the battle-hardened woman who had stood in defense of Hogwarts. No, this version of Minerva looked as she had on rare, peaceful evenings. Hair half down, glasses set aside, her eyes thoughtful and warm behind her familiar severity. She looked up from the desk and smiled, just slightly. "You always did find the oddest corners of this castle to sit and think," she said gently. Dumbledore chuckled under his breath. "And yet, you always seemed to find me." "I wasn't looking," she replied. "I was remembering." He rose and approached her. "Do you suppose this room is memory, then?" She glanced around. "Perhaps. Or perhaps it's something softer. The space between remembering and dreaming. A place where things settle, not to be changed, but to be honored." She gestured to the papers in front of her, though the ink on them shifted like water, their contents unreadable. "I've been going over some of your choices," she said, with a wry lift of her brow. "And I must admit, even here, in this room with no doors, you remain the most maddeningly complex man I've ever known." Dumbledore smiled, eyes twinkling. That's kind of you. They sat together in companionable silence. No explanations, no need. At last, she reached out and gently placed something on the desk between them. A single silver coin with the mark of a phoenix etched across it. A reminder, she said, that even the wisest of us need a bit of rebirth now and then. Before he could reply, her image began to dim, not fade entirely, but soften, as though she were becoming part of the room again. "Will I see you again?" he asked softly. Her answer came not in words, but in the way the tea kettle poured itself a second cup, just across from his. The seat was empty, but the presence remained. After Minerva faded into memory, the room shifted again, not suddenly, but like a curtain slowly being drawn aside to reveal a new set piece in an old play. A soft, tinkling sound began, like wind chimes in a summer garden, and from the center of the room rose a small, curious contraption. It looked like a carousel, but instead of painted horses, there were spinning glass bowls, each filled to the brim with lemon drops in various shades of yellow and gold. Dumbledore tilted his head, amused. "You have been listening," he said aloud, a twinkle in his eye. The carousel spun lazily, playing a delicate tune, one he couldn't quite place, but somehow knew all the same. As it turned, the candies sparkled faintly under the golden glow of the ceilingless chamber, and the scent of citrus and sugar filled the air. He stepped closer and plucked a single drop from the nearest bowl. As it touched his tongue, a memory bloomed, not a grand memory, but a small, cherished one. A first day of term, a nervous student's smile, the quiet joy of offering something sweet in a world often too bitter. He chuckled softly to himself. "You always did have a flair for the dramatic," he said to the room. In response, a tiny poof sounded behind him. He turned to find a small phoenix chick, bright red gold, fluffy as a dandelion, and wobbling slightly as it tried to perch on top of one of the spinning glass bowls. It let out a high, slightly awkward chirp, flapped its wings once, and sent a small rain of lemon drops scattering across the floor like marbles. Dumbledore knelt down and scooped the little bird into his palms. It blinked up at him, chirped again, and promptly sneezed, a tiny spark that smelled suspiciously of honey. "Well," he murmured, "aren't you a cheerful little complication?" He set the bird on his shoulder, where it nestled into the folds of his robe with a satisfied puff. The carousel continued its slow turn, music tinkling like laughter in the air. For the first time in what felt like hours. Or was it days? Dumbledore didn't think about time at all. Just sweetness, warmth, the soft weight of a phoenix chick snoring against his collar. The carousel began to slow, and as it did, the room itself seemed to exhale, still glowing, still magical, but now content. The phoenix chick was still nestled against his shoulder, occasionally snoring out soft golden sparks, when Dumbledore noticed a gentle creaking sound nearby, like wood expanding in warm sunlight. Across the room, a wardrobe had appeared, not grand or imposing, but quaint, all crooked angles and brass knobs that didn't quite match. Its door was slightly ajar, and from within spilled a gentle flickering light and a single thread of music, like a lullaby hummed behind a closed door. Above it, a sign had appeared, painted in looping letters that shimmered as they shifted. The Thought Tailor's Closet, for the garments you dream in. Dumbledore raised an eyebrow. Now what are you up to? The phoenix chick chirped in sleepy agreement. He stepped closer and gently pulled the door open. Inside, he found a peculiar collection of robes, not the stiff, somber sort worn to ceremonies, but dreamy, fantastical creations, clearly stitched from imagination itself. There was a cloak made entirely of midnight sky, complete with constellations that moved. A pair of soft slippers that left behind tiny glowing footprints. A hat that seemed to whisper riddles in 7 different languages, all at once. And a scarf that constantly adjusted itself to the exact temperature of one's mood. At the back of the closet hung a deep plum robe with embroidered tea leaves and golden lemon drops stitched into the hem. Dumbledore ran a finger across the fabric. It purred, actually purred. There was no real reason to try anything on, but he did anyway. As he draped the plum robe over his shoulders, the entire room seemed to giggle. The carousel spinning a little faster, the floating teacups clinking a waltz. The phoenix chick fluttered into the air and circled him once, before landing proudly atop his head, where it immediately fell asleep again. In the corner, a mirror he hadn't seen before reflected not just his appearance, but his thoughts. Literal clouds drifting above his reflection, one shaped like a dragon, another like a pie, and a third shaped like a pair of socks arguing with a spoon. Dumbledore watched it all and laughed softly. Not a laugh of disbelief, but of deep, quiet joy, the kind only found in dreams. "Well," he said, turning in place as the robe adjusted its cuffs on its own, I must say, I wear my dreams rather well." And as if in agreement, the wardrobe door closed itself with a polite click, the sign above it fading into a soft swirl of sparkles. The room quieted once again, but it was clear. It wasn't done with him yet. The robe adjusted its collar for him one last time before slowly dissolving into a shimmer of candlelight, as though it had been imagined into existence, and now, politely, was bowing out. Dumbledore stood still in the quiet. The phoenix chick on his head gave one last sleepy chirp before vanishing into a puff of golden feathers, which floated down like dandelion seeds and melted before they reached the floor. The room dimmed, not to darkness, but to something softer, like the edge of a dream just before waking, still warm, still safe. And then, from across the chamber, a gentle glow began to rise from the floor itself. A circle of light, not harsh but warm and golden, began to form at the very center of the room. Inside it appeared a figure, not made of flesh or fabric, but of light. It had no face, no name. It radiated calm, like moonlight without cold, or firelight without flame. Dumbledore watched without fear. The figure did not speak. It didn't need to. Instead, it offered him something simple, a memory. Not a grand one, just a moment. He saw himself, younger, laughing beside a tree on the Hogwarts grounds, a book in his lap, a lemon drop in hand, his eyes closed toward the sun. No titles, no wars, no great responsibilities, just being. The image stayed for a while, hovering in the golden circle, before fading into a soft bloom of stardust. Dumbledore closed his eyes. "I remember," he whispered, "and I will carry it." The glowing figure stepped back, or perhaps simply dissolved into the light, and the room began to shift one last time. The carousel, the floating shelves, the invisible mirror, all slowly faded, like chalk drawings in the rain. And then silence, but not emptiness, only peace. A doorway appeared behind him, simple, wooden. It hadn't been there before, and perhaps it wouldn't be there again. It didn't matter. He walked toward it, pausing only once to glance back at the place that had held him so gently. "Thank you," he said softly, to the room, to the memories, to himself. Then he stepped through, and beyond the door was sleep. The end. Thank you for joining us tonight on Storytime Boulevard. We hope this gentle journey through the room with no doors brought you a sense of peace, reflection, and quiet magic. As you drift off now, May your dreams be filled with warmth, with wonder, and with the soft memories that live in your heart's quiet corners. Good night, dreamer. From all of us here at Storytime Boulevard, may your sleep be deep, your heart be light, and may you always find your way back to the rooms that remember you. Until next time, sleep well.